Just for context, because myself and the next two speakers will be speaking specifically to the asset management survey and gap analysis. Who attended Omar Smadi's presentation yesterday on the asset management survey? Okay, about half of us. So I think I'll spend a little bit of time telling folks what that is rather than just gloss over that and get right to Colorado DOT. And before I do that, I do want to provide a little bit of context of where we're at, much like Tim did for Minnesota. I think in order to understand why Colorado has so eagerly embraced the asset management guide from AASHTO and the self-assessment component within it, it's important to understand where Colorado DOT is in its asset management journey. So I'll give you a little bit of background, and then we'll kind of roll up our shirt sleeves a little bit and tackle the nuts and bolts of the actual self-assessment. For those who have completed it, we can kind of compare notes on interpretation of questions and whatnot. For those that haven't completed it yet, I know that we strongly encourage you to do so. Each state's been asked to do so, and we're still looking to get a higher response rate right now from the state DOTs. You know what? When people think of Colorado these days outside of this room, I think you think of beautiful mountains, a lot of recreation. Tim Tebow used to be our quarterback, now it's Peyton Manning. But what's relevant to this group, and I think the one takeaway from this one slide, is we're pretty much the average state DOT. We're about 1/50th of federal distributions. We're about 1/50th of the population. We're about 1/50th of the lane miles. So I think for context, we're kind of in the middle, and maybe we're probably, for context and asset management, about in the middle as well. We've gotten started. We think we know what we want to accomplish. We've set our goals, our objectives, our vision for asset management, but we're certainly not as far advanced as some state DOTs are, and that's why the self-assessment for us was so important and so useful. I'm stealing from North Carolina here right out of the asset management guide, but my point is that it's a journey, and I look at states within WASHTO like Oregon and Washington, and they're further ahead than us. They have strong inventory, strong information, strong performance measure programs that are really tracking a broad array of assets, perhaps what we endeavor to, but what we don't do today. But I think no matter what state you are, I think it's always going to be a journey. I highly doubt any one of us in this room will ever say, okay, I'm glad that asset management thing's done, now I'm going to work on the next project. What is it? I don't think we'll ever get to that point. I know in Colorado we won't. We're developing our asset management plan today, and software and technology is helping us to do that. And we wrote a scope of work that we thought would get us what we needed in asset management. But as we start checking off things in the scope of work, as we're about 6 months into a 12-month project, everything that we check off, we add 3, 4, or 5 things to our parking lot of things that we want to improve. I mean, we have a bridge program, we have a pavement program. We started on the premise that those are mature, robust programs. And even as we delve into those, we say, boy, wouldn't it be nice if we could get this added element or feature out of those programs. So for us, this is definitely a journey, and I'll show you the journey. And I don't want to walk you through the journey. I think what's important to know is that mid-1990s, late 1990s, Bridge in Colorado developed a bridge program that met the needs for bridge. Asset management for pavement meant a separate software, a separate silo, if you will, and it met the needs for pavement. And that was in the mid-1990s to late 1990s. So in 2000, CDOT said, boy, wouldn't it be nice if bridge and pavement started talking to one another? And maybe we have other assets we want to pull into this. And we actually developed an asset management plan, which today is now 10 to 12 years old. We started moving toward recognition that we wanted to capture asset management, but financial information, data at an enterprise level, not within silos, not within geographical regions, but at an enterprise level. And our executive director decided that we should implement an enterprise resource planning software. This was a major effort. This was in the tens of millions of dollars with federal participation. At the very time in Colorado, other executive branch agencies were unfortunately seeing one failed IT implementation after another. We were getting a lot of bad media in Colorado. The legislature was looking at the executive branch saying, you guys don't have this figured out. Do you know how you're spending the taxpayer money? Our executive director at the time, to his credit, in my opinion, said, anyone working on anything related to technology, take a time out. We're dedicating our focus on this enterprise resource planning implementation. And that was at its core a financial system, but with fingers and in a lot of other systems. So folks that were on the asset management committee that had developed that asset management plan suddenly put that on hold and it went on the shelf. And so really the most important part of this slide is SAP Go Live, November 1, 2006. Everything else related to technology kind of got shelved, and that included asset management. Well, now you start fast forwarding and we started taking on different things, and again, it's ingenuitive resources in the regions, and the headquarters has said, I need to solve a quick problem of my own. I'm going to develop my own stovepipe solution to solve that problem. And we've kind of come back to full circle and said, we got to bring this back together, folks. But now you've got a whole new set of personalities at the table. So we're, in a way, we're kind of starting from scratch, but we do have a little bit of background. Some folks that are still with the organization that were on that original committee that we're leading from. In fact, the sponsor was the staff branch director 10 years ago, and he's now our chief engineer. So we lean on him heavily to move forward. Fortunately for us, AASHTO and FHWA came out at exactly this time with an asset management guide. I don't know if Matt Hardy's mentioned the asset management guide during this week at all. But we decided, what we have as a state DOT is you got 40 hours worth of work each week, if not more, on just what comes across your desk and implementation. And where do you find time to take on all this wonderful research and actually make use of it? We developed a book club, believe it or not. And we got together every other week, the weeks that we weren't having asset management meetings, and we went through chapter by chapter the AASHTO Asset Management Guide. So we got to chapter 2, and it had a self-assessment, and we said, hey, this would be great. Let's do a self-assessment. Those of you that saw Omar's presentation yesterday will recognize this. This is just one excerpt of the self-assessment. So the self-assessment's broken into 4 different areas. Policy is one of those areas, and we asked ourselves, in the different areas of policy, how are we doing? Well, I knew that, I convene a meeting every other week, bringing together the chief financial officer, the chief engineer, very busy people to talk about asset management. And just to give you guys an idea, and state DOTs will probably know this resonates. I mean, I bring donuts to every meeting. And I know the chief financial officer doesn't like glazed donuts, he likes cake donuts. You think I'm joking. I get the chief financial officer to show up because he knows I'm going to get cake donuts just for him for that meeting, okay? So this is how we get participation. Without that participation, we would not have an asset management committee. We would not be moving forward on an asset management plan. I'm not joking. That's where we're at. So I knew I had a captive audience. There's 75 questions in the full-blown asset management guide. My core team on asset management took 15 questions that we thought were most emblematic of the guide, about 3 or 4 from each of the sections. We pulled them together and we just threw it on the agenda. We took 10 minutes. We had the chief financial officer, chief engineer, staff branch director, and about 15 of us. And we said, folks, we're not going to talk. We're going to hand you a 1-page sheet. We're going to ask you to go ahead and answer these questions. And that's how we got the self-assessment done. So that was kind of that first round. And then lo and behold, 2 weeks later, I get an email from Omar saying, please complete the full-blown self-assessment. Well, it's hard. Omar's right. He said it's 20 to 25 minutes. That's assuming one person and only one person can speak to each of the 75 questions. It was a 2-week process for us because me as the asset management guy, I want to make sure that I go to the subject matters who know a little bit more on any one of those individual questions to get the best possible answer I can for Colorado DOT. And while I trust Omar when he says this is a confidential self-assessment, in Colorado, when I hit the send button on an email, it's now public record in the state of Colorado. So if I'm going to go on record as saying I strongly agree that we should be doing this, and yet we ain't doing anything close to this, that could show up in the Denver Post tomorrow, theoretically, okay? Now, Denver Post isn't checking my email, fortunately, but I have to be aware that that's what happens. So I just want folks, when you send out those surveys, recognize it's 20 to 25 minutes. It took me 2 weeks. to get public information to sign off on my response, and to get government relations to sign off on my response, okay? And I'm glad we did it. So that second round was answering Omar's full-blown self-assessment, and then there was a follow-up with a little bit more open-ended questions. And I know that if this gets turned into a PDF, those files won't be available. But I put together an Excel spreadsheet, and if we have time, I can open that up, put it together. So as I tracked individual responses, I drop it into a column, and I started averaging our answers on all of these questions. And in the end, it came out and it looked a little bit like this. So your blue bar for any given question is what staff at CDOT believed we desired to be at in asset management. The red bar is where we thought we were today. Does that make sense to everybody, what you're looking at? So I know you don't have the questions in front of you. What's important to notice is policy is bars 1, 2, and 3. Program delivery 4 through 6, information and analysis are toward the end. 5-point scale where 1 is we're barely doing anything and 5 is we want to be doing this full blown. Our average gap is pretty close to 2, so we're about halfway away on average from being where we want to be in just about everything, with information being the biggest gap. Now, last December, some of us attended a data needs and performance management conference. And I think a conclusion that came out of that was, boy, we got a ton of data now at state DOTs. The question is it the right data? Have we QA/QC'd it? Are we using the right data to make decisions? So when you see a big gap in data, it's not that we're not collecting data. It's that we're not sure if it's getting collected consistently. It's not sure if we have the right information to make asset management decisions. And we really heard that loud and clear as we had our meeting to talk about the results of our survey. So within the asset management guide, there's this maturity scale, and we kind of ask folks informally, where are we at CDOT? And much like Tim said in Minnesota, depends on the asset you're talking about. In pavement, we believe we're either proficient or best practice. We've really dug into our pavement system in this process. I feel we got a really great system. We did have, in some rare circumstances, some curves that showed we could chip seal our way back to brand new pavement. 5 consecutive years of chip seal. We tweaked that, but this is the kind of data questions and integrity issues that you have to address when you're dealing with asset management. We got that fixed. I feel we got a really good system. Our other assets, not quite there. If we had to put ourselves overall in a certain area, we're somewhere between awakening and structured within asset management, in our humble opinion, okay? Our humble opinion may not mean much outside of the organization, so we did do a performance data integration plan, which we're really thrilled about. It's really helping us move forward on making sure that we're not collecting the same information twice, that we're collecting things consistently. We're moving forward on that now. The consultant that did that for us, as part of what they did, don't bother with the words. I'm going to give you a quick snapshot here. They looked at 3 different areas, and technology and tools, people, and process. And they said that, hey, we've got a lot of good technology and tools in place already, but back up a second. Did you put the process in place first to make sure that the right information was going into those technologies and tools? And the answer is no, not always, not consistently. And people fell somewhere in the middle. So we're aware on process that we need to be doing a better job in order to really fully leverage and utilize the technology that we have. And that was somewhat consistent with the self-assessment, but perhaps a little bit inconsistent as well. So we need to go back and take a look and say, what needs to be fixed in order to start closing this gap? In order to get to the level that we say we need to be at, what do we need to improve on? And largely it's process that we need to improve on. The Asset Management Guide offers this structure, and this structure can help close that gap for us and for you. With data and systems there on the right. We've developed our own slightly different structure to asset management going forward, but I think this is a helpful place to start. If you haven't started yet, our executive director sees this and says, holy cow, there's a lot to this, and has a better understanding today of why it's taken us a while. It's not, to make a decision tomorrow to launch this and have it launched in 2 months. That's not the case. It's taken a while for us to build a good system, but that self-assessment is a great place to start. So especially if you don't have an asset management division within your organization, or you don't have one individual assigned this responsibility, you start learning what are the skill sets that we're going to have to bring to the table in order to build a more comprehensive plan throughout the department. It's not just bring your bridge engineer and your pavement engineer to the table and you have an asset management team. You need more than that. So this is actually a Colorado DOT. This is the structure today. We have an oversight steering committee. It doesn't include the executive director, but it does include members of his team, senior management folks. Communication to our partners. Randy Jensen from FHWA is here today, and we've brought him to the table, and he's been very helpful for us working through the asset management program going forward. We report on occasion to our technology team. We report on occasion to our operations team. Knowledge management for us is managing data and documents, and there's a separate initiative that I'm involved in there. And then you can see we have planning people, we have regional representation, we have engineers, we have ITS, we have maintenance, we have fleet at the table once a month when we meet. And then when we need to make some major enhancements, but in a very specific area, we create a task force. So the executive director recently charged me with bringing real estate into the analysis, our property and facilities, our maintenance shed, our headquarter buildings. We set up a real estate task force to accomplish that. Collecting data is just about making sure that you're gathering the right information and then having a place to put it. And this is a quick glimpse of our enterprise resource planning software. We can capture up to 50 fields on a maintenance work order ticket if we want to make our maintenance folks capture that much. So that's just a quick overview. Hopefully it gives you a little bit idea about what the gap analysis is like, and I will hand it back to Jenna.